When my daughter held the keys in front of my face and told me I had 24 hours to get out of my own home, I collapsed onto my knees, begging her to reconsider. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office discovering my late husband's secret that would destroy her world completely. That's when I realized family loyalty is like fine china, beautiful until it shatters into pieces that can cut you to the bone. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a mountain road, and you'll want to be here for every sharp turn. My name is Clara. Just last year, I was a respected pillar of our community, with a beautiful home, a devoted husband of 30 years, and a daughter I thought loved me more than anything. Now I'm a 57-year-old widow fighting for my dignity and the truth. It started the day after the anniversary of Carlos's death. I'd spent the morning placing fresh flowers on his grave, whispering the things I wished I'd said when he was alive. I came home to find Julia, my only child, sitting at the kitchen table with a strange man in an expensive suit. "Mom, this is Mr. Alvarez," she said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "He's been helping me sort out some financial matters." The way she said financial matters sent a chill through me. Julia had changed since her father died, becoming distant, secretive, but this felt different. "Mrs. Mendez," the man nodded, sliding a folder across the table. "These are the transfer documents for the house." Transfer documents. My fingers trembled as I opened the folder. What is this about? Julia's eyes were hard. "Dad left everything to me, Mom. Not us." "Me." "The house, the accounts, everything." "That's impossible," I whispered. "We built this life together." "Well, he didn't think so." She stood up, towering over me in her heels. "You have until tomorrow to pack your things. I've been more than generous giving you a whole year to mourn before handling this." "Julia, please." "Don't, Julia, please me. You controlled every aspect of Dad's life. You suffocated him. And now," she dangled the house keys in front of my face, "now I'm taking back what should have been his freedom." I reached for the keys, for my daughter, for anything to anchor me to the reality I thought I knew. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Script part separator, Her words hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent 30 years in that house. I'd painted every room, planted every flower in the garden. How could Carlos have done this to me? That night, I packed a single suitcase while Julia watched from the doorway. I took only clothes, some photos, and my wedding ring. Everything else, apparently, wasn't mine anymore. I checked into the roadside inn, a place I'd driven past 1,000 times but never imagined would become my home. The room smelled of old cigarettes and cheap cleaner. I sat on the sagging bed and finally let the tears come. My phone buzzed with messages from friends asking where I was. I couldn't bear to tell them my own daughter had thrown me out. The shame was too much. Sleep came in restless bursts. I kept waking up, certain I was back home, only to find myself in that sterile room with its buzzing fluorescent lights. By morning, anger had replaced shock. Carlos and I had been married for 30 years. There was no way he would have left me with nothing. Something wasn't right. I called Margaret, my closest friend since college, and the only person I could trust with my humiliation. "Clara, what's wrong? You sound terrible." "I need a lawyer, Margaret." "Do you know anyone?" "A lawyer? What happened?" I could barely get the words out. "Julia has evicted me from my own home. She says Carlos left everything to her." "That's impossible. I've known you two forever. Carlos would never." "Well, he did. Or at least, that's what Julia claims." Margaret was silent for a moment. "My cousin David is a good attorney. Specializes in estate law. I'll call him right now." 2 hours later, I was sitting across from David Reynolds, a serious man with kind eyes. I told him everything while he took notes. "Mrs. Mendez," he said when I finished, "have you actually seen the will?" "No. Just the transfer documents Julia had prepared." He frowned. "That's unusual. A daughter wouldn't typically handle transfers herself." "Did your husband have his own attorney?" "Yes, he justice. He handled all our legal matters." "Let's start there," David said, picking up his phone. "Something doesn't add up. Script part separator equals. While David made calls, I stared out his office window at the town Carlos and I had called home for decades. From here, I could see the church where we married, the park where Julia took her first steps. How had it all fallen apart so quickly? David set down his phone with a troubled expression. Mrs. Mendez, I have some concerning news. Richard Ortiz claims he never prepared a final will for your husband. That's impossível. Carlos mentioned meeting with him several times last year. David leaned forward. Mrs. Ortiz says Carlos made an appointment, but cancelled at the last minute. Every time. My hands began to shake. Then who prepared the will Julia has? That's what we need to find out. I'm filing an emergency petition to see the document she's claiming gives her ownership. We can have this before a judge by Friday. That fast. When someone's been potentially defrauded of their home, the courts take notice. In the meantime, I want you to think carefully. Did Carlos have any other legal contacts? Anyone who might have helped him prepare documents without your knowledge? I shook my head, then stopped. There was Pedro Vega, Carlos's childhood friend who moved back to town about 2 years ago. They started spending a lot of time together. David wrote down the name. What does this Pedro do for a living? He's in finance, I think. Investment banking. Carlos started investing with him after they reconnected. David's eyebrows rose. Did your husband make any large financial moves in the last year of his life? The memory hit me like a thunderbolt. Yes. He liquidated his retirement account. Said he found an amazing investment opportunity. I was furious with him, but he insisted it would double our money within months. David's expression darkened. Mrs. Mendez, I think we need to look into Mr. Vega very carefully. This situation has just become more complicated than a disputed will. I felt sick. What are you saying? I'm saying we might be dealing with financial manipulation, elder exploitation, or worse. And your daughter might be an unwitting part of it. Script part separator equals. Walking out of David's office, the sidewalk seemed to sway beneath my feet. Elder exploitation? Carlos was only 60 when he died. And Julia, could she really be caught in someone else's scheme? I needed answers. Instead of going back to the motel, I drove to Pedro Vega's office downtown. The sleek sign read Vega Financial Solutions with a fancy logo that screamed success. My hands trembled as I parked. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. Do you have an appointment? No, but I need to see Pedro. Tell him Clara Mendez is here. Her smile faltered. Mr. Vega is in meetings all afternoon. It's about my husband's investments, I cut in, louder than intended. The ones that disappeared when Carlos died. The glass doors behind her opened. Pedro stood there, immaculate in his tailored suit, not a single gray hair out of place despite being Carlos's age. Clara, he said smoothly. What a surprise. Please come in. His office was intimidating, all glass and chrome with city views. Photos of Pedro with important people lined the walls. None with Carlos, I noticed. I won't waste time, I said, remaining standing though he gestured to a chair. What did you do with my husband's retirement money? Pedro's smile didn't waver. Carlos made some high-yield investments. Unfortunately, the market turned shortly before his death. These things happen. And the will. Did you help him write a will that left me with nothing? Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise? Fear. I don't know what you're talking about. Julia evicted me yesterday. Claims Carlos left everything to her. Pedro's face changed then. He picked up his phone. Cancel my next meeting. Then to me, we need to talk. That wasn't the arrangement. What arrangement? Carlos never meant to disinherit you. That's not what he signed. Script part separator equals. Pedro's words hit me like a slap. I gripped the edge of his desk to steady myself. What exactly did Carlos sign? My voice didn't sound like my own. Pedro ran a hand through his perfect hair, suddenly looking less polished. A trust. The house and assets would go to Julia, yes, but with you as the beneficiary for life. You were supposed to have full rights to everything until... He hesitated. Until what, Pedro? Until you chose to sign it over to her. Or until you passed away. He walked to a painting on the wall, swung it aside to reveal a safe. Carlos was concerned about estate taxes. This was just protection. My blood ran cold. So why am I sleeping in a motel tonight instead of my own bed? He pulled a folder from the safe, hands slightly trembling. Because this is the actual document Carlos signed. Which means whatever Julia showed you is not what we prepared. I took the folder, hands shaking. Inside was a trust document, Carlos's familiar signature at the bottom. Pedro was right. I had lifetime rights to everything. Julia would only inherit after my death. If this is real, then what does Julia have? Pedro's face darkened. Either a forgery, or what? Or Carlos signed something else later without my knowledge. My mind raced. When did he sign this? About 3 months before he died. I remembered those final months, Carlos growing distant, having whispered phone conversations, disappearing for hours. I'd attributed it to his illness, to depression. What if it was something else entirely? I need a copy of this, I said. Pedro hesitated. Clara, there's something else you should know. The investments Carlos made. He looked genuinely troubled. They weren't exactly what I told him they were. What does that mean? It means the money isn't gone. It's just not where you think it is. That's when his office door burst open. Julia stood there, her face flushed with anger. Behind her was the man who'd been at our house, Mr. Alvarez. What the hell is going on? Julia demanded. Why is she here? Pedro's expression turned to stone. Julia, this is unexpected. Her eyes narrowed as she saw the document in my hands. What is that? What are you showing her? I faced my daughter, strength returning to my voice. The truth, Julia. I'm finally seeing the truth. Script part separator, Mr. Alvarez stepped forward, his face tightening. Whatever that document is, it's irrelevant. We have a properly executed will dated just 6 weeks before Carlos's death. A will that conveniently appeared after he died? I challenged. One that his regular attorney knew nothing about? Julia looked between me and Pedro, confusion briefly replacing her anger. What are you talking about? Dad prepared everything with Mr. Alvarez here. He said you'd try to fight it. Pedro closed the folder in my hands. Julia, your father came to me months before he died. This trust protects both you and your mother. That's not what Dad told me, Julia insisted, her voice rising. He said Mom had controlled everything for years. That she'd try to keep his money from me because she never thought I was responsible enough. The words stabbed through me. Is that what you believe? That I think so little of you? You've never approved of my choices, Mom. My career, my relationships, nothing was ever good enough. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat. This family drama is touching, but legally irrelevant. We have a valid will that's been properly executed. Let me see it, I demanded. You'll see it in court, he replied coldly. Pedro moved from behind his desk. I think we all need to step back and... You stay out of this, Julia snapped. Dad told me you were just another vulture circling his money. Pedro's face drained of color. He said what? I studied Julia's face, the absolute certainty in her eyes. Whatever Carlos had told her in those final months, she believed it completely. Julia, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, something isn't right here. Your father and I had our problems, but he wouldn't leave me destitute. Maybe you didn't know him as well as you thought. She turned to leave, then paused. The movers come tomorrow for your things. Whatever you don't claim, I'm donating. Script part separator, The door slammed behind Julia and Alvarez, leaving Pedro and me in stunned silence. Pedro, I said finally, my voice trembling, what the hell just happened? My own daughter thinks I'm some kind of monster. He slumped into his chair. Clara, I don't know what Carlos told Julia in those final months, but it wasn't the truth. At least, not the whole truth. I need a copy of this trust. Now. He nodded, making a copy while I tried to piece together the fragments of my shattered life. Carlos had been acting strangely those last months. Secretive phone calls, unexplained absences, mood swings I'd attributed to his illness. Here, Pedro handed me the documents. There's something else you should know. About the investments. Just tell me, Pedro. I'm beyond surprises at this point. The money isn't gone. Carlos and I set up an offshore account. He wanted funds that Julia couldn't access immediately, said she needed to mature first. I stared at him. So my husband wasn't just keeping secrets from me, but from our daughter too? He wanted to protect both of you. In his way. By lying. By making her hate me. Some protection. My phone buzzed, a text from David. Judge granted emergency hearing. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Need you at office by 7:30. I gathered my things, the trust documents secure in my bag. Thank you for this, Pedro. But I need to know, why did Carlos really move that money? What was he afraid of? Pedro avoided my eyes. You should ask him about Mariana. Mariana? Who's Mariana? His expression said everything. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me as 30 years of marriage suddenly came into question. I think, he said carefully, that's a conversation better had after your court hearing. I left Pedro's office with more questions than answers and a name that felt like a time bomb in my pocket. Mariana. Who was she? And what did she have to do with my husband's final betrayal? Script part separator ===. I barely slept that night. Mariana. The name played on repeat in my mind, conjuring 1,000 different faces. Was she young? Beautiful? Had Carlos loved her? I tortured myself with possibilities until dawn broke over the motel parking lot. At 7:15, I arrived at David's office, exhausted but determined. He was already there, reviewing documents. Mrs. Mendez, good morning. I see you've been busy. He nodded at the trust documents I'd placed on his desk. Pedro Vega gave me these. Apparently, this is what Carlos actually signed. David scanned the pages, his eyebrows rising. This contradicts the will Julia's presenting completely. You're the primary beneficiary here. There's more. I took a deep breath. Carlos moved money offshore before he died. And there's someone named Mariana involved somehow. David stopped reading. Mariana? That name's familiar. You know her? His face darkened. Not personally, but I've heard it. Mariana Vega. The air left my lungs. Vega, as in Pedro's wife. Ex-wife. I'm not sure, but there were rumors years ago. The courthouse loomed before us 30 minutes later, a granite monument to justice that suddenly felt like a stage for my humiliation. Inside, Julia sat with Alvarez, not meeting my eyes. Behind them sat Pedro, looking uncomfortable. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called us to order. This is highly unusual, she began. 2 competing documents from the same deceased, both purporting to be his final wishes. As Alvarez presented Julia's will, dated just weeks before Carlos's death, I noticed something odd, a familiar signature on the witness line. Your Honor, I whispered to David, pointing. That witness signature, it's Mariana's. David's eyes widened. He quickly wrote a note and passed it to a young clerk, who hurried from the courtroom. Script part separator ===. When Alvarez finished, David stood. Your Honor, we've discovered some concerning information. The witness on this alleged will is Mariana Vega, ex-wife of Pedro Vega and, he paused dramatically, a woman who had a personal relationship with the deceased. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Julia's face went white. Pedro looked like he might be sick. The judge banged her gavel. Explain yourself, counselor. Mrs. Vega was romantically involved with Carlos Mendez prior to his death. We believe this creates a significant conflict of interest regarding this will. Alvarez jumped up. Objection! These are baseless allegations. Just then, the court doors opened. The clerk returned with an older woman in a crisp business suit. Your Honor, David continued, I've subpoenaed Carlos Mendez's phone records. They show hundreds of calls to Mariana Vega in the months before his death. Additionally, We have the notary who witnessed the trust here to testify. The woman stepped forward, swore her oath, and confirmed the authenticity of the trust I'd received from Pedro. This is absurd. Julia finally spoke, her voice cracking. Dad wouldn't. He couldn't. Mr. Alvarez, the judge interrupted. Was Mariana Vega present when this will was signed? Alvarez hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. But there's no law against. Were you aware of her relationship with the deceased? His silence was damning. The judge turned to Pedro. Mr. Vega, what is your relationship to Mariana Vega? Pedro Sotodeslovli. She's my ex-wife, Your Honor. We divorced 15 years ago. And were you aware of her involvement with Mr. Mendez? Script part separator, Pedro hesitated, looking trapedra. Yes, Your Honor. Carlos and Mariana, they had a relationship in college, before either of us married. They reconnected 2 years ago. Julia gasped. I felt like the floor was collapsing beneath me. And you didn't think to mention this while advising Mr. Mendez financially? The judge asked sharply. I thought it was in the past, Pedro answered weakly. Until I found out about the offshore account. What offshore account? The judge's eyes narrowed. David stepped forward. Your Honor, we've just received documentation showing approximately $850,000 was transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands 3 months before Mr. Mendez's death. The beneficiaries listed are Mariana Vega and a child named Carlos Vega Jr. The courtroom erupted. Julia began sobbing. I gripped the table to keep from collapsing. Order. The judge slammed her gavel repeatedly. Mr. Alvarez, did you prepare this will knowing these circumstances? Alvarez loosened his tie. E preparei de documente at Mr. Mendes' request, Your Honor. He wanted to provide for his daughter before certain facts became public. Facts like his secret family? David pressed. Objection! Alvarez shouted, but his voice lacked conviction. I need to see Ms. Vega in my chambers immediately, the judge declared. Ende Mr. Alvarez, e o deber como tu. Court is in recess for 1 hour. As they filed out, I turned to Julia. Her face was ashen, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Did you know? She whispered. Ishu my head, my own tears falling freely. No, Svetiart. I had no idea. Dad had another child. A son. Her voice broke on the word son, and I remembered how Carlos had always subtly pushed for more children, how disappointed he'd seemed when complications after Julia's birth made that impossible. It appears so. I reached across the divide between us, taking her trembling hand. Julia, whatever your father did, whatever lies he told us both, I never stopped loving you. I never tried to control his money or keep it from you. Script part separator, Her fingers tightened around mine. All these months, I thought you were the manipulative one. Dad kept saying you'd try to control everything after he was gone, that you never thought I was capable. He manipulated us both, sweetheart. Turned us against each other while he hid a second family. Pedro approached cautiously, shame evident on his face. I didn't know about the child until recently. Isviar, Clara. Carlos told me the offshore account was to protect assets from taxes. Julia glared at him. You were supposed to be Dad's friend. I was. But Carlos changed these past 2 years. Became secretive, paranoid. Doors bourse open. A woman in her 50s entered, holding the hand of a boy about 10 years old. I knew immediately who she was, Mariana. She had Carlos's taste written all over her, elegant, poised, with the same dark eyes as our daughter. Behind them, the judge and Alvarez returned, their faces grim. Your Honor, David protested, we weren't notified. I asked Ms. Vega to come in with her son. The judge cut him off. This matter affects them directly. Mariana surveyed the room, her eyes lingering on Julia, then me. When she spoke, her voice was surprisingly gentle. I never wanted this to happen this way. Carlos promised he would tell you both after his treatment. Treatment? Julia and I said simultaneously. The cancer, Mariana explained. He was given 6 months. He wanted to set things right. Cancer. I felt dizzy. Carlos died of a heart attack. Mariana looked genuinely confused. No. It was pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. That's why he reached out to me after all these years. He wanted to meet his son before. I turned to Pedro. Did you know about this? He nodded miserably. Carlos vori me se cresce. Said he didn't want to be a burden to either of you. That's why he set up the trust, so everything would be taken care of quietly. Script part separator equals. The judge called us back to order. I'll be frank, this is one of the most complicated estate disputes I've seen. We have multiple documents, apparent deception on multiple fronts, and now a minor child's interests to consider. Julia wiped her tears, straightening in her chair. What happens now? Given the circumstances, the judge continued, I'm freezing all assets pending a full investigation. The house cannot be sold or transferred. Mrs. Mendez will retain residence rights as specified in the trust, which appears to be the earlier and more properly executed document. Alvarez began to protest, but the judge silenced him with a look. Mr. Alvarez, I obey referring your conducto de bar association. Notarizing a will with a beneficiary as witness shows either incompetence or deliberate misconduct. Mariana stepped forward, her son pressed against her side. Your Honor, Carlos and I never intended. Mrs. Vega, the judge interrupted, your son's claim will need to be established through proper DNA testing. Until then, the offshore funds remain frozen as well. As the hearing concluded, we filed out into the hallway. Julia walked beside me, shell-shocked. Mom, I'm so sorry. I fought. I believed. I squeezed her hand. We both believed what he wanted us to believe. Mariana approached cautiously, her son half hiding behind her. Clara, Julia, this isn't how Carlos wanted you to find out. Did he ever intend to tell us? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. She nodded. He made me promise that if something happened before he could, I would come forward. But then Alvarez contacted me, said Carlos had changed his mind, wanted to protect everyone with separate arrangements. Julia knelt to the boy's level, studying his face. He had Carlos's eyes, his chin. Hello, she said softly. I'm Julia. I guess I'm your sister. Script part separator equals. The boy peered up at Julia, eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. I know. Dad showed me pictures of you. He said you're really smart. Julia's breath caught. I saw the impact of those simple words. This child had known about her all along while we'd been kept in the dark. We should talk, I said to Mariana. All of us. Not here in the courthouse hallway. An hour later, we sat in a private room at a nearby restaurant, the boy, Carlos Jr., though he went by CJ, playing games on Mariana's phone while the adults attempted conversation. He started coming to see us regularly about 2 years ago, Mariana explained. At first, just to meet CJ. Then when he got sick. Why didn't he tell us about the cancer? Julia asked, her voice small. Mariana sighed. He said you both had been through enough with your grandmother's long illness. He didn't want you watching him deteriorate the same way. So instead he manipulated us, turned us against each other, and hid a fortune offshore, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. He thought he was protecting everyone, Mariana replied. The money was for CJ's education, and to help me care for him. The trust was to ensure you kept your home, Clara. And Julia. She hesitated. What about me? Julia pressed. The later will. Carlos feared you wouldn't accept CJ. That you'd contest anything that included him. He wanted to secure your inheritance separately, then introduce you to your brother once everything was legally settled. He had so little faith in me, Julia whispered. I reached across the table to take her hand. In both of us. But he was wrong. Pedro arrived, looking haggard. He placed a USB drive on the table. All the offshore account information. Account numbers, passwords, everything. He turned to me. Clara, I'm sorry. I should have told you. Yes, you should have, I said coldly. 30 years of marriage, and I had to learn about my husband's secret life in open court. What happens now? Julia asked, looking at her half-brother with a mixture of wonder and grief. Now we move forward together, I said. As a family. All of us. 3 months later, my life had transformed completely. The court finalized its ruling, upholding the original trust. Julia and I both remained in our family home, with her taking the upstairs apartment we'd once considered renting out. The offshore money was divided, half in a trust for CJ's education and care, half returned to our family estate. Most surprisingly, Julia and CJ formed an almost instant bond. She took him for ice cream, helped with homework, introduced him to her world with an openness that shamed Carlos's lack of faith in her. Mariana and I developed a cautious friendship. There were still moments of pain, of jealousy even, but we were united in our determination to raise Carlos's children without the deception that had marked his final years. Pedro lost his financial license over the offshore accounts. Alvarez was disbarred for ethical violations. The secrets and lies that Carlos had cultivated had damaged many lives beyond just our family. Today, as I watch Julia teaching CJ how to plant bulbs in what was once my carefully tended garden, I feel a bittersweet peace. The daughter who once held keys in my face, demanding I leave my home, now brings me coffee on the patio and asks my advice about her latest career move. When Carlos died, he left behind more than just a complicated will and a secret family. He left a mess of broken trust that we've had to rebuild, brick by painful brick. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or legal documents. It's about choices we make every day to love, forgive, and move forward together. Julia looks up from the garden, waving for me to join them. CJ holds up a daffodil bulb like it's buried treasure. Mom, come show us how deep to plant these, Julia calls. I set down my coffee and step into the sunshine, toward the family I nearly lost and the one I unexpectedly gained. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow from the most broken ground. And Carlos, wherever he is, I hope he sees that his children found each other after all. Not through his careful manipulations, but despite them. The truth about Carlos's deception freed us all in unexpected ways. As I look across our extended family table, Julia and CJ laughing together, Mariana sharing recipes with my sister, I realize that the worst betrayal somehow led to our greatest healing. The secret Carlos thought would destroy us became the foundation for something stronger than he ever built with his careful lies. Sometimes what breaks your heart also breaks open your life to new possibilities. And that's a testament not to his schemes, but to our resilience. What lies ahead? I don't know. But for the first time in decades, I'm living my truth instead of someone else's carefully constructed fiction. And in that truth, I've found freedom.